How exactly does a team that set all kinds of regular season records lose in the first round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs to a team that finished 43 points back in the standings? Unfortunately, that's what we are left to discuss here on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked Beat. Today is Monday, May 1st, and I want to start by thanking each and every one of you for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day every single day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. And today we're talking about the Boston Bruins being eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs way too soon after losing Game 7 last night to the Florida Panthers on home ice in overtime after holding the lead in the final minute of the third period. How did this happen? What do we make of it? Where does it rank among Game 7 losses? We'll talk about all that. Quick reminder first that you can find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my dad jokes, and hockey tweets at Ian C. McLaren. And of course, there will be so much to cover in the fallout of this loss. Going to be remaining daily for the remainder of the Stanley Cup playoffs leading up to the draft. So please do stick with the podcast and hit that subscribe button to keep up on everything that comes from this devastating loss. Now, for me, there's two ways that you can look at this. You can call it a complete collapse, an absolute choke job, 100% unacceptable. And those are completely fine responses. You simply can't lose 3 games on home ice and blow a 3-1 series lead coming in after setting the regular season wins record, regular season points record, and playing for the Stanley Cup. That was the ultimate goal this season. Brad Marchand was on this very podcast 6 weeks or so ago saying the President's Trophy means nothing. The regular season success means nothing. Their goal was to win the Stanley Cup, and they didn't even get out of the first round. The Florida Panthers finished 43 points behind them. Made the playoffs in the last week of the regular season. Boston had clinched back in March. They clinched the President's Trophy several weeks before the end of the regular season. How does this happen? Of course, if you're on Twitter, you're already seeing all the jokes, all the memes, the role reversal with the Toronto Maple Leafs, blowing a 3-1 series lead like Toronto did a couple years ago against the Montreal Canadiens. It's just unacceptable and just so difficult to swallow. That's certainly one way of looking at things. And I can't say that I haven't been there in the 12 hours since the Bruins lost that game. The other way you can look at it is to say that's just playoff hockey, and it hits different than the regular season. Brad Marchand, after the game last night, said it's a game of inches. He had the game on his stick in Game 5 with a couple seconds left. He could have buried it. He could have beaten Bobrovsky, won the series for the Bruins, didn't capitalize, and they capitalized on their inches. Well, in Game 5, it was a complete giveaway on the part of Linus Ullmark. He said they dug down one more than we did, one more battle, and that's it. Playoff hockey does indeed hit different. It's a completely different animal than the regular season. You can have all the accolades. They're going to win a bunch of awards. Jack Adams Trophy, likely for Jim Montgomery. Vezina Trophy, likely for Linus Ullmark. Another Selke, very likely in Patrice Bergeron's future. But playoff hockey just hits different. Everything is magnified. It's a game of inches. The Bruins had a chance to win in Game 5. It was back and forth in Game 6, but they held leads in the third period. They had a lead last night in the third period. David Pastrnak scores. You think, surely it's over. They just couldn't get the puck out of their zone with Sergei Bobrovsky pulled. And ultimately, Brandon Montour found the back of the net, and Florida outplayed the Bruins in the extra frame. Just straight up outplayed them. Where am I right now? Well, I'm kind of in the same place as Jim Montgomery. He expressed disappointment, confusion. You saw the look on Patrice Bergeron's face. You saw him hug all of the guys as they left the ice, similar to last year after the Game 7 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. What got me was the hug with Brad Marchand, where they took an extra couple seconds, clearly some tears in the eyes. I mean, I'm not going to lie, that hit me as well. Just a brutal disappointment. A far too early end to this season. And Brad Marchand saying, and I think we all feel it, that this one is going to hurt for a long time. We'll talk later in segment 3 about where this ranks among these Game 7 losses recently in the shootout era in recent history. And we'll talk next about how exactly this did happen. Take a look at some of the specifics as to how and why the Bruins are out of the playoffs after the first round. But first, a quick word about today's sponsor, which is Athletic Greens. If you're looking for an extra boost today, if your gut system is not great, if you're not feeling very energized, completely understandable, AG1 is there for you. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you can absorb 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients that supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Basically, all the things that we're lacking here this morning as Bruins fans. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine to recover that cost him about $100 a day. He created Athletic Greens after experiencing how difficult it was to create an optimal nutritional routine on your own. Reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. That's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day every single day. Everydayers can expect complete coverage of Boston's early exit from the Stanley Cup playoffs. Media day will be coming up. Locker room clean out. Comments from Don Sweeney, Cam Neely, coaches, players, possible retirement announcements. what the roster might look like next season with so many free agents on their cap-friendly page. You can expect a full breakdown of it all here on Locked On Boston Bruins. But first, we continue to talk about why exactly the Bruins are out. To me, it looked like the Bruins played like a team afraid to blow it more than the best team in regular season history asserting their dominance. I mean, full credit to the Florida Panthers. They played well. They took advantage of the opportunities given to them by the Bruins. And yes, I say that realistically. The Bruins gave them this series on a silver platter. All they had to do was bury their chances, and they did. So many turnovers, so many giveaways, just a complete lack of confidence, it looked like, for the Boston Bruins. They did not look like a team that dominated the regular season. They looked like a team that was afraid to blow it, and they did. You play like that, you're more likely to blow it than not. There were, of course, a bunch of bad lineup decisions along the way. Jim Montgomery deserves some criticism for excessive line juggling. He even said after last night he would have done it different starting Game 5. He would have had Begeron and Marchand together. It took him 8 minutes to get there. Didn't know if it made a difference, but that's one thing you look at that he would change. He admitted that after the game. And yeah, Game 5, so much line juggling going on, it didn't really make a lot of sense. You stick to what got you there. You stick to what's been working for years in Marchand and Begeron. There was no reason to split those guys up. You also have to look at the blue line, benching Matt Grzelcyk, sticking with Derek Forbort. A lot of people pointing to, well, you need him out there for the penalty kill. The Bruins only killed 75% of their penalties in this series. They were the number one penalty killing team during the regular season, and that was maintained without Forbort in the lineup for much of the last couple months of the regular season. He was a liability on the blue line. Derek Forbort should have been replaced with Matt Grzelcyk. Straight up. Matt Grzelcyk should have been in there every single game of this series. Until a time that he showed that he couldn't handle it. He handled it well, and he was what they needed on the back end in terms of puck moving ability. Derek Forbort, he was a liability back there and didn't help the penalty kill. And then, of course, goaltending. You looked at Boston's numbers heading into the playoffs. They had inflated save percentages. We all know regression was possible. Hopefully not until next regular season. But it hit at the very wrong time. And the Bruins got .885 goaltending in all situations during the series. That's just not good enough. Montgomery probably should have gone to Jeremy Swayman a bit earlier. Should have started him in Game 6. Linus Ullmark, all due respect, he was amazing all regular season long. He looked like a fish out of water in Game 6 in particular, flailing around, not being able to control his rebounds. Swayman was pretty solid in Game 7. I know he was very emotional after the game, saying he needed to make one more save. It wasn't on him. The defense in front of whoever was in net was not particularly great. And again, there was a bunch of turnovers. As much as I loved Tyler Bertuzzi, there was that one that he made in Game 5, I believe. There was the costly turnover in overtime. Just not strong on the puck, not making the best decisions, and it hurt them, and it hurt the goalies as well. Look, offense wasn't an issue in this series. The Bruins scored plenty of goals. The problem was they allowed a ton of goals as well. The Bruins, most goals in the first round, pending tonight's Rangers Devils Game 7, although the Rangers or Devils aren't scoring double digits goals to catch them. The Bruins scored 27 goals. They allowed 26 goals. Scored the most, but they allowed the most. And ultimately, this isn't an aggregate score series. The Panthers got the last goal of the series, and that was the win. The Bruins, 3.86 goals per game, second only to Edmonton. They allowed 3.71 goals per game, which is a goal and a half more than what they allowed in the regular season. Less than what they allowed to the Panthers in the regular season, mind you. They allowed 3.75. But the penalty kill, not great, 75%. The power play was fantastic. Ranked third, they scored on 40.7% of their opportunities. But the penalty kill wasn't great, and so many turnovers. And finally, of course, injuries were a problem for the Boston Bruins. No excuse. Every team battles through injuries. We learned after last night's game that Patrice Begeron was playing with a herniated disc in his back. David Krejci, surely not 100%. Linus Ullmark likely dinged up in some way. We will learn more in the coming days. But that's just the reality. The injuries happen. You play through them. You fight through them. Other guys stepped up. Tyler Bertuzzi, Brad Marchand led the way with 10 points each. Taylor Hall, Dmitry Orlov, 8 points apiece. Jake DeBrusk, Pavel Zacha, 6 points each. David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, 5 points each. Ultimately, Boston's core players weren't their best players. That could have made the difference. You know, David Krejci played great last night. I think he had 1 goal, 2 assists, something like that. But you needed more from Pastrnak. Ultimately, he had 5 goals in 7 games. Boston's core guys weren't able to get it done. And it's likely due to health. And I mean, who knew? Maybe you can't rely on late 30s guys to get the job done all through the regular season and into the playoffs. Those are some reasons why the Bruins weren't able to get the job done. Yeah, again, full credit to the Panthers. You could argue that Jim Montgomery was outcoached by Paul Maurice. Maurice, much more experienced in the playoffs, made the decision to go to Bobrovsky, who was solid for the Panthers. And he did less, ultimately, than Jim Montgomery. He didn't tinker too much. He just stuck with it, relied on his core guys. Matthew Tkachuk, probably the best player in the series overall. Got contributions from his star players. And the Bruins kept Barkov pretty quiet. I mean, again, it goes back to my earlier point that playoff hockey just hits different. It's very unpredictable, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. We're going to talk about where this disappointment ranks among recent Game 7 losses. Thank you once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day every single day. Please don't disappear on me. Every dayers, again, can expect full coverage of the fallout from this loss. Do we think everybody's going to get fired? Probably not, but there could be some retirements. There will be some salary cap casualties. There will be guys who won't be coming back. Could be a very different looking roster next season, and we'll cover it all here on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Our favorite team bounced from the postseason way too early. And for me, most recently, there have been a handful of bitter disappointments. I'm still not over 2004, to be honest. Boston Bruins loaded up prior to the trade deadline that year. Sergei Gonchar, Michael Nylander, Joe Thornton, the peak of his powers, hindered by a broken rib, and the Bruins lose in 7 games that year. And then we all know he was traded following the lockout, changed the course of Bruins history, perhaps for the better, because they were able to get Zdeno Chara, Mark Savard, yada, yada. That's a story for another day. 2009 was bitterly disappointing, losing to the Carolina Hurricanes in overtime, in Game 7, in the opening round. There was the loss to the Philadelphia Flyers in 2010, the reverse sweep. Seeing David Krejci get injured, knowing Mark Savard wasn't exactly right from all his concussions. That one certainly hurt. Of course, the Bruins went on and redeemed themselves next year with the Stanley Cup win. And then, of course, there's 2019, losing Game 7 in the Stanley Cup final to the St. Louis Blues. Choosing between that and last night, it's kind of like having both of your eyes poked out and choosing which one hurts less. It's impossible to quantify that really right now. 2019 had an air of finality to it in that the core that then included Torrey Krug, Zdeno Chara, Tuukka Rask, that was the end, really, or that it wasn't the end. They all came back for the COVID year, but that seemed like their last real kick at the cup, so to speak. They were President's Trophy winners in 2020, but COVID bubble, all that, Rask leaving in 2020, you're not going to get much closer than Game 7 on home ice in the Stanley Cup final. And that series was similar to this one in that Boston lost games 2, 5, and 7 on home ice. You had your captain coming back from injury in Game 5, some overtime losses. This one, though, could be the end for Begeron and Krejci. And you're not going to get a much better team than this in the salary cap era. The Bruins had depth up and down the lineup. They took advantage of LTIR and added Bertuzzi. They added Orlov and Hathaway to an already stellar lineup. And I look at the boys' t-shirt, the names up and down the lineup. This is arguably the best team the Bruins have had, obviously, since the 2011 Cup win, but maybe in the whole Cup era. Such a good, deep lineup, and losing in the first round after a record-setting regular season, having to see other teams keep playing, celebrating, it just hits different. Game 7 in 2019, there was no more hockey to be played. So you absorb that loss, move on. Now, 8 teams keep playing. And I said last night, I will not be jumping on any bandwagons during this difficult time. I don't feel like watching any hockey. Be keeping an eye on all the Bruins fallout, of course, but to see 3 more rounds, knowing the Bruins, if they got past the Panthers, still had a legitimate shot at winning the Stanley Cup. It's just very difficult to take right now, and not a loss that I'm going to get over anytime soon. that hug between Marchand, Bergeron, I had tears in my eyes, legitimately. Had to log off Twitter immediately and just watch Succession, take my mind off things. Found it very difficult to sleep last night. It could have been the vanilla Coke with coffee can that I had around 4 o'clock last night. That might have contributed to it, but I don't know. That's life. That's playoff hockey. It happens. I don't blame the people who are in the angry, complete choke job. This team, 2011 was an outlier. The real Bruins are the ones who can't get it done. Or I'm also with those who are sad, feel bad for the players. They wanted to win. They wanted to get it done. The bounces just didn't go their way. They had some, misplays, certainly. Some brain farts. Some defensive lapses that were uncharacteristic. And everybody believed the Bruins were going to get this one done, and they didn't. That's on them. For me personally, I'm not the Boston Bruins. This isn't my loss. They have to live with it. They have to bounce back from it, and we'll see what kind of team they bring back next year. If Bergeron retires, if Krejci retires, or if they decide to give it one more go. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast over the next few weeks. And congrats to the Panthers, I guess. I won't be watching Toronto, Florida. I just can't. I just can't do it. All right? I can't do it. Not going to do it. That's it for today's episode, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me once again. And I hope that you continue to tune in as we discuss the fallout from this first round exit and look ahead to what could be a pretty busy offseason for the Boston Bruins. That's it. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Stay off Twitter if you need to. And we'll be back tomorrow with a fresh episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.